So I had something in my mind when I sat down to write this. And then I started reading, and something else happened. And I thought maybe I would do this instead. Why the Green New Deal is humanistic to its core and why we all should support it. The Green New Deal is a broad set of policies to reach net zero emissions in a decade and create ambitious social programs in the process. It's not a new term or a new idea, but it has recently been codified into a resolution introduced by Representative AOC and Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District. The Green New Deal idea here in our very own nation is the biggest development in climate change politics in history around the world. We could be a world leader, leading in something that really matters and that could literally save all humans everywhere and set precedent for other nations. We could be leading by example. We could be the leaders of something so important, not just leading by power and might. For the first time in the US, we have proposed framework that would have taken years and years to compile that understands that climate change and the economy are fundamentally the same story for us humans. There's not a subsector of the economy which has climate change policy or climate change politics, but they are literally the exact same thing in the Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal recognizes this. That's why they put it in it. That is hugely exciting to me. I mean, I was just squealing when I heard all of the stuff that is going to be combined in it. Because once you recognize that, it allows you to do two things. One, by treating climate change and the economy as the same, you can put together a plan that's the scale of the challenge that we face. We are on the verge of a massive runaway climate change. And in order to prevent that, we need to extremely and rapidly transform our nation's energy system and other sectors like agriculture as well. So in order to do that, we, or the leaders of this nation, really need to understand climate change and the economy as a single integrated unit. And number two, the other benefit to understanding that climate change and the economy are the very same thing is that we can achieve a bunch of goals at once. And most specifically, we can address and transform the kind of savage economic and racial inequalities in our country. Through a form of climate investment, i.e. the Guaranteed Jobs Program, similar to the program the FDR implemented and with the very same title, this jobs program prioritizes communities that have suffered disinvestment and pollution like those factory farming and combines a really significant increase to social services with an effort to really change the way we make a living in this country and across the country. The Green New Deal does have some flaws, or as I call them, shortcomings. The Green New Deal does not take on the fossil fuel industry. It calls for net zero emissions, but not an end to new coal, new oil, and gas projects. It doesn't call to directly phase out these industries either. The net zero idea is that the net amount of emissions should be zero by 2030 or shortly thereafter. Counter arguments to this are, quote, that therefore leaves open the possibility that we would still be omitting carbon dioxide, methane, you name it. But I say with reforestation and the other policies that we have that will be reabsorbing these elements, we should be fine. To be honest, this criticism and this argument is a bit overblown. Net zero emissions by 2030 is still an incredibly ambitious target. And if we got there, we could be on track to prevent truly catastrophic warming. The bigger problem with the resolution, according to the Climate Justice Community, is that the fossil fuel industry the fossil fuel industry is the number one barrier to climate change politically. This industry has bought off most of the Republican Party. They have bought off many members of the Democratic Party as well. They are a humongous industry that stands to lose everything. And they're going to fight to the death. I'm just saying, if the Green New Deal doesn't take them on, and if we think that we can somehow deal with them while completely wiping them out kind of slowly, I think that that's kind of a naive view of how politics work in this country, and they should too. And the climate justice community does have a good point, that should be in there. But it's not, so I will move on. There are arguments from the other side of the aisle as well. Conservatives are claiming that the Green New Deal is far too overreaching, that the radicals on the left are using the Green New Deal as a platform to add in unrelated proposals for free college and jobs guarantee and other ideas that motivate progressives. That came from Jonathan Chait, New York Times or New York Magazine. But it's so important that the Green New Deal is this broad. The Green New Deal really represents a complete transformation of our country's economy, an utter overhaul of our energy system, making urban life walkable and more livable, more affordable, with many changes to agriculture and much more. I don't even have time to list them all right here. So we have two options. We can either try to make all these changes while leaving the power structure of this country intact, and therefore leaving half or more than half of this country really suffering and left behind. Or we can take advantage of this opportunity to start to address some of the massive inequalities at the same exact time. Why would anyone choose to leave more than half of their fellow countrymen and women and children behind? I can't fathom that. I think that it's really remarkable when so-called centrists attack the Green New Deal, when they seem to want to make a much smaller policy that would appeal to fewer people and therefore be less popular. Nothing has polled in climate policy as well as the Green New Deal has, and that's historically. On the polling, Green New Deal has it. The Green New Deal polled a majority with Republicans and extremely high support with the Democrats. Why? Because actually, who in this country thinks that there should be more heat waves, more pollution, more tax breaks for the billionaires, fewer jobs for people who want to work, stronger hurricanes, bigger droughts, more wildfires? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants any of that. And the Green New Deal says, hey, actually, yeah, we are going to make your future safer and more economically secure as well. We're also going to provide you with a job if you don't have one, or you're in danger of losing one, or underemployed. We're going to make sure that you have health care. We're going to make sure that if somebody's pockets get clipped into, it's the pockets of the billionaires. These ideas are extremely popular across the country, right, left, middle, doesn't matter. So creating much narrower policies that would be supported by fewer people is a failing idea, obviously. Previous climate policies that look more like what the centrists are proposing have already failed time and time again. In Washington State, for instance, in the last election last year, there was a carbon tax proposal with massive climate investments that would have created lots and lots of jobs. It failed. It did not get passed. It failed because the fossil fuel went bananas. They spent a ton of money and influence, and it failed. Now we have an idea that AOC has brought, which is tackle inequality and tackle climate change at the exact same time. And the American people love it. We can really take on an issue of this magnitude and continue to live, can we really take on an issue of this magnitude and continue to live our lives as we do, driving cars, flying in airplanes, etc.? That's the narrative, right? And the answer of human consumption, American consumption, is very, very vexed. I do admit that. There are certain issues that are clear, though. We need to eat less beef. Doesn't mean you can't have it. It just means maybe have it once or twice a week, maybe once a week, maybe twice a month. Switch it up, just not every day. Fly in planes, not jets. And if you have to take jets, like, the presidents and leaders of countries, then take less trips on jets. That's all we're saying. Nobody's saying take it all away from you. But in the more important ways, the data shows that we need to change the way that we consume. Of course, the very affluent absolutely need to consume less. They definitely consume too much. That is 100% clear. The data is very clear on that. The affluent consume a wildly disproportionate amount of the world's resources. The poor, on the other hand, and the working class in this country especially, and in most ways, do not consume enough. The change that we need is a shift away from a lot of private consumption on things that we don't really need toward a more public consumption of things that we all love and can use to benefit the country and lift us up. What people really need and want, and things that cause too many people to go bankrupt, are things like education, healthcare, and truly affordable housing. Health, education, and housing are the three things that really put our brothers and sisters in debt and are the things that we need to make available for everybody. That's why the Green New Deal proposal is so strong, because it includes these three things among so many others. Historically, what progressives have fought for in actual communities are a bunch of amenities that enrich everyday life for the people in those communities, the everyday average people. Things like libraries, basketball courts, soccer fields, playgrounds, community theaters, concert halls. Basically, facilities for culture, for leisure, for sports, where people can spend time with the people, and activities that they love. And historically, the labor movement has always said, we want to reduce the working day, maintain benefits, maintain a decent salary, because what we ultimately want out of life is when that clock out time for the day comes, we want a chance to be with the people we love and do things that we enjoy, enjoy the one life that we have. So I think that there is a debate to be had about consumption. But I think that if you look at what working people and labor unions have fought for this entire century, the 20th century, it's more time to spend with loved ones and in high quality public spaces. And what the Green New Deal provides is basically that. There's actually a really nice alignment between the Green New Deal policies and the kinds of urban policies that working people have fought for a very, very long time. And the form of consumption that's best suited for long, healthy lives of the people and a healthy planet as well. So why is it so important that these public goods and public services are actually offered by the government and not the private sector? Well, if it was 1985 or 1990, maybe on issues of energy, there could have been a very strong case for a gradual carbon tax or a gradual transition. We could have still decarbonized on time. But friends, now we can't. We've wasted too much time and we can't. That time's over. We can't go back. It's done. And if we can't take a look at and if we take a look at the moments of the most dramatic economic change for the good in the United States, you are ultimately going to be looking at the New Deal, FDR's New Deal. And what was discovered in the New Deal was this. The most pragmatic, non-ideological thing that exists is an intensely motivated public sector with a huge amount of popular pressure mobilized from the bottom up, i.e. labor movements, people who were retiring or on the verge of retiring in the 1930s and had no pension to rely on. Huge numbers of people pushing on the government to solve their problem. And what was found in the FDR government was a team of advisors, and what happened over time was that the most progressive advisors, with the most invested in public institutions, not private, became the most successful simply because they were the ones who were able to solve the most problems. public institutions that were created via the New Deal policies to eliminate unemployment and to bring cheap, affordable public power. And at that time, it was renewable power. It was hydroelectric dams for communities. Those people who were able to solve communities' problems, people's problems with jobs guarantee, electricity that was renewable, and so on, eventually won prestige within the New Deal and were able to do more and more and more because the success of their ideas were seen and felt by the people. So they were supported and encouraged to do more. So we do not really have any record of any private sector solving these kind of big, gigantic problems. But we do have a record of the public sector solving huge, gigantic problems fairly quickly as well. Through FDR's New Deal, though FDR's New Deal did make mistakes, but they are mistakes that we can learn from as to not make them while implementing the Green New Deal. Any sober look at history from a non-ideological perspective gives us a very clear picture. It's very clear that large public agencies responding to public pressure with an experimental mindset so that when data comes in and shows that something isn't working, they can try something new. Well, we can clearly see that this is what we have to do. Those are the type of mindsets that we need and will work with this Green New Deal. And history shows that this way does work. So we have that on our side. However, this time our Green New Deal will be more inclusive and more accessible than the New Deal had been. For all of the good that the New Deal did, it left many Americans out. People who were already marginalized, people of color and other minority groups, as well as the very poorly stricken people with no means whatsoever. Sorry, my cat likes to be in the middle. People who are hit first and hardest by the climate and economic changes will really benefit from the Green New Deal policies. The New Deal, in many ways, preserved patriarchal society relations. And I would argue that the worst thing that the New Deal did in terms of inequality is that the coalition made a deal between FDR, the liberals around FDR, and the southern states. Many were white supremacist states. And essentially, the New Deal hardened Jim Crow in those areas. One of the best examples of this is the housing inequality. The New Deal made it very easy for white families, middle and working class, to acquire mortgages, and very, very difficult, if at all possible, for minority families and any class to do so. And a deep segregation was seen because of this. And we're still fighting to get out of it because of this. It was a housing apartheid. And you can Google housing apartheid and read the whole story because that's the title of it. And we cannot do that again. We just can't. I don't stand for it. And that would be a huge part of people not wanting to vote for the Green New Deal. So it's very important to note this housing apartheid that came out of FDR's New Deal was a public-private partnership. It was all about government incentives, regulations of partnerships with the real estate industry, the mortgage industry, the banking industry, and so on and so on. And since then, actually, many of the attempts to increase public ownerships have also been public-private partnerships, which studies done by Princeton University also reproduce supremacy and apartheid scenarios when you have private involved. Not every single time, but the ones that did have it involved had the the private. Let's see. Yes. Which states done by Princeton, the apartheid scenarios, time and time again. So a truly important lesson from the New Deal when it came to inequality is we cannot make partnerships with white supremacist states or leaderships or organizations. And we cannot make partnerships with a private market that is going to play to people's prejudices and is willing to almost always take the quick buck or solely worry about their Bottom line, we need to have our institutions that provide public goods truly responsive to ordinary people. Then we can start to achieve change. The Green New Deal has two really strong elements that could prevent this inequality from occurring. One, the jobs guarantee. This policy is not set up to be easy to scam. It's set up to save this country and the citizens of it. Who has trouble getting a job, somebody might say, in today's economy? Felons, minorities, women who just had a baby, people that had kids and stayed home with them and don't really have a resume. The populations that have the most trouble getting a job would have the most to gain from a jobs guarantee. There's nothing more fundamental to racial and class inequality than a job guarantee. The second piece, which is the Green New Deal proposal, but is not elaborated enough in the idea of housing, a housing guarantee. It is in the Green New Deal. There's just not a lot that I could find about it that I could really dig into, but I'm very happy about that. If anybody knows anything about Martin Luther King's speeches, that was something that he just, a UBI, basic income, and a guaranteed housing and guaranteed job. Those three things, he said, would bring equality to the whole nation. And here we are, 2019, and none of it's been done since then. Excuse me.
Yeah, Martin Luther King was some kind of
can't stop.
Dirty social
he was
democrat
a dirty social democrat. I know
He was. And they don't talk about that. Like on Martin Luther King Day, they only talk about... Yeah, but if you go back and listen to his speeches, you're like, holy shit, he's like Bernie Sanders. And what's funny is Bernie Sanders was literally there. He's one of two people in the Senate yet who have actually seen his "I Have a Dream" speech.
Who marched with him? Yeah, who marched
with him? Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Martin Luther King dissed unfettered capitalism all the time. He thought, it's about the haves and the have-not. It's built into the system. So, and there's also another one you guys should look up to watch, and it says the problem with poverty is literally they don't have enough cash. That's the problem. It's simple. It's so simple. And so in a purely capitalist system, if you're poverty-stricken, that is the problem. You can't tell a mom who doesn't have enough food or money to get food that her problems are other things than she just doesn't have cash, because if she had it, she would go buy food. So that's why social equality is so important. These two pillars, a job guarantee and a housing guarantee, really address the core root causes of inequality, and so many other forms of injustice will fit into those two. They will be eliminated by those two. And I think that the Green New Deal can help facilitate criminal justice reform and the complete elimination of mass incarceration in general. The Green New Deal is so very humanistic, there is not one moral reason not to support it. And if there is a jobs guarantee, so people have somewhere to go, and there's healthcare already, so they have a job, they have healthcare, that's not going to make them bankrupt. The healthcare is taken care of, and they have a job. And then there's housing guarantee. Why the number of people committing criminal offenses is going to plummet, because most criminal offenses are done in very poor areas. They just are. The white collar crimes and all the other crimes are just so different. They just are. The highest years put behind bars is in the poorer areas, or with a small drug charge, a non-violent charge. And so I think that if people are guaranteed, I didn't go to college because I was told at a young age, I hope you know that if you want to go to college, you better get a job now and start saving for it, because I don't know what to tell you. But if I had known that I could just choose where I want to go because that's where I want to study, it would have been so different. And I'm sure it's that way for a lot of people. And there were times where I thought that I was about to be homeless, where I'm a second away from being homeless with a 5-month-old baby as a 19-year-old. guaranteed job and a guaranteed housing would change so much of my life and choices that I made. So I'm speaking from personal experiences, and because as a humanist, reading the Green New Deal I had to change what I was going to write. I just thought, if there was a bill that could be called humanist, it would be the Green New Deal. I thought, wow, I have to, and maybe I'm not the only one who saw it, but I needed to share it. All of you. Needed you to hear.
You roboted this time. You roboted.
Dang it. How about now?
Yes, you're good.
Am I done? Okay. That was it. I just needed to share how humanistic this proposal is. It's not a bill, it's a proposal. It's a list of things that need to be done together. And I mean, think about that too. The poll that was done in the history of climate policy, nothing has ever polled as high as this deal. I'm stoked. And so if we could get the message out there, the narrative that how could you be humanist? How could you morally not want this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the I'm not sure if Medicare for All pulls higher. I think it does, but I think Medicare for All is included.
Yes, it is.
In this too. So yeah.
And I love
it really does have. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No. Ladies first.
Oh, it is Women's Day and all.
It is.
No, I really love how they're going to tackle the injustices of location, of factory farming, of a huge corporation saying, well, all of that land got foreclosed on because those poor farmers couldn't handle it, and it's a poorer neighborhood, and I'm going to pay a shit ton to be there, which is way less than they should have paid. But the people that lead that state are looking at it like, oh, that's income for us, so they don't really care. They don't have to pay taxes because they're creating food for the country. And the people that live in that area don't really have a say because they're not paying the state what the farm is paying the state as far as, the amount of property that they bought and how important they are and how many Congress people they support. And it's just, that is systematic. That is, I'm not saying the system wrote that in, but it is part of the system. And if we can change it, we should. If we can, we should. And I think that we can. And gosh, AOC is fucking brilliant. She is just a little jitterbug to me. She's, almost 30. She's not even 30. I just would smooch her whole little face. She's such a big dreamer, and if 70% of this Green New Deal gets tried in every state, we will see massive changes, not implemented everywhere, just tried. Like, try it on, give it a 12-month trial. And like FTR's deal, those people that were in it, that were implementing those changes, the ones who did the most were reelected or elected to higher seats because people wanted more. So it's just, that's why there is so much propaganda against it. That's why you will only hear how we can't do it. We can't afford it. One thing I do know, I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know the total after 10 years of the Green New Deal is blah, 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 whatever that number is. And they keep saying, we can't afford that. Yeah. You what?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
I can elaborate on that if you don't mind.
Right. Well, I just know that if you take just healthcare out of that one, out of 10 years, they say the same thing about healthcare. It's going to be this number and we can't afford it. But if you take the healthcare off of it and just take those 10 years and keep the system as it is now, and then total that number, it's almost 3 times that amount. But the individual people pay it, which is too expensive. So if we make it a government program like Medicare, but for all, it ends up being way cheaper. And yes, the people still pay for their insurance. They just pay for it when they pay their taxes, like every other country. So with the Green New Deal, it's the same thing. You might say after 10 years, it's so expensive. But to not do these things,
it's more expensive.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, astronomically. And that's even if we only did half of them. So, yeah. Don't let them scare you.
Yeah, because they say that Medicare for all is it's going to cost like $36 trillion over 10 years.
Right.
That or like 34 trillion. And that's good and fine because that's actually a pretty accurate number. And that says it totals $260,000 per household in the United States. But if we stay with what we have now, it'll cost $38 trillion over 10 years.
Right.
Weird how they don't really mention that.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah. So we're actually saving $2 trillion by switching to Medicare for all.
Trillion with a T.
Two. So if you're really worried about the deficit,
no,
which at this point you shouldn't be, because I mean, like, what we're like $23 trillion in debt right now, and you're worried about more debt.
Right.
Like
no,
that.
They're not.
Like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Like at this point, money kind of doesn't matter.
No, not like that. And it's the PragerU people and the people that hold to the taxes are theft, which is the dumbest shit I ever heard. They don't take their own highway with them when they go traveling. Like, come on. Their kids also go to public schools. They also use Social Security when they get older. And they also use Medicare when they get older, unless they're independently wealthy, in that good for you. And why would you worry about paying a little bit extra so someone else in your country that you love, Patriot, why wouldn't you want to help them out? If you're independently wealthy, how would that hurt you? How would paying out a little bit hurt you? It's not going to. It's the taxes are theft, people. And it's I don't want my taxes to pay for people I don't approve of. Trans people, people of different color than them. The bigots, the racists, the people that say they're not bigoted or racist. They just don't want their tax money to pay for things they don't approve of. They would rather just give to charities, which a charity is great. And I'm glad that we had them in the 19th century because more people would have just never made it. There just wasn't enough to go around. It was unfettered capitalism. We didn't have safety nets, but we do now. And because we have the data of what the New Deal did, we can analyze it and see what worked, what didn't work, not make those same mistakes, and not be afraid to make new mistakes, because that's how we learn. And we need to have a mindset that's, experimental, that, that didn't work. And we have the data. Here are the numbers. It did not work. Let's try something else instead of just throwing it away, because people matter. It matters to do things right. I want to be the best country because we treat people the best, because we have the most freedoms, because we have the best education and the best health care. Those are the things I want, and they're worth fighting for. And it's super humanistic to think that. It is.
There you go.